Murfreesboro and Rutherford County are so rich in their respective histories, with many women who've had integral roles in creating our community's sense of place. The Rutherford Arts Alliance is proud to partner with Murfreesboro City TV to showcase a number of these women as a part of our Leading Ladies of Rutherford County History project. From murals to our community-involved play, A Party of 12 by Mary Donay Johnson, we're proud to honor these diverse women of our past who inspire us as we give them a voice in today's world. Let's find out more about one of these leading ladies.
Christine Huddleston was an influential community activist and the first woman ever elected to the Rutherford County Commission. She was passionate about helping others and founded the Room at the Inn homeless shelter in Murfreesboro. Her son, Tony, talks about her life and her dedication to helping those in need.
Tony, we want to talk about Christine Huddleston today, the lady who had a group that formed the Room at the Inn. So tell me your earliest memories about Chris Huddleston.
Some of the first things I remember is when she used to help people that we lived out between Las Casas and Walter Hill in the country, and my daddy carried the mail on the route we lived on, so we knew most everybody up and down through there. And when somebody's house would burn or something would happen that somebody needed help, she was there pretty much all the time. She'd spring into action. She'd go to church and she'd say, "Those Jones kids need some shoes. I want shoes out of you. I want coats out of you." And she got her shoes and coats, and the Jones kids got them. So that's some of the first things I remember about her helping people. And that's eventually became Room at the Inn, because she did it.
She always had a heart for the disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And wasn't afraid to include other people in that feeling.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, she would help you if she could. If there's any way that she could help you, she would do it.
And how did she get you boys to help with that?
Sometimes she said, "You're going to do it." She was a pretty strong personality. And if anybody knew my mama, she was hard to say no to. But yeah, she as long as I can remember, she would collecting up coats, collecting up shoes, collecting up money from churches, collecting up to try to help somebody's house that was burned out or whatever the case was.
The community took care of the community then.
At that time, yeah.
And also, I know you can fix anything, maybe besides a broken light bulb, but you've learned that in your early years. Can we fill me in on how that came about?
My daddy could fix just about anything. He was a good woodworker, and my mama called herself an antique bootlegger.
Bootlegger?
Antique bootlegger, yeah.
Explain that one.
Well, she bought stuff at auctions and various places, and she'd take it to the flea market and sell it, the big flea market in Nashville. So she just tagged herself an antique bootlegger. But she'd bring in a pie safe that had 4 coats of paint on it. And me and Daddy'd go out there and we'd scrape paint off and we'd fix where the rats had chewed through the back. And so him being a good woodworker kind of translated over to me being a good woodworker. All my uncles, my mama's brothers, they were always working construction even though they had other jobs. So I've been around it a lot, and it came from both sides, Huddleston and Baird.
Interesting. What was her full name?
Her Ethel Christine Baird Huddleston.
Baird Huddleston.
That was, she got Ethel Christine my grandma, her mama, told one of her sisters that she was going to get the name of the next kid. And the next one was my mama. So she named her after herself, Aunt Christine, and her other sister, Aunt Ethel. So she's Ethel Christine Baird Huddleston.
Now, was Aunt Ethel the one that she and your mom were great cooks?
No, that was her youngest brother's wife, Darlene.
Okay.
Darlene Rowland Baird. And my mama and Darlene were probably two of the best cooks you could ever put your feet under the table. And it was funny because there were people that, Dan Whittle, you remember Dan?
Oh, yeah.
He'd come to my mom and daddy's house every Thanksgiving just to eat a plate of dressing that she made. And she'd always invite, come on in, Dan, just, you know, she don't want to turn nobody away.
There's a big Southern controversy about how you properly do dressing. How did she prepare it?
It was always cornbread and biscuits left out overnight, and drippings from the turkey, and that kind.
And it was done and baked.
It was baked
all together in one dish.
In one dish, yes, ma'am.
Because the flip side of that are people who bake it in the kind of like a croquette or
a serving
per serving, and get it kind of crispy and so forth.
No, she always made it in a was that 9 to 13 pan, and
so just like you and your brothers helping her with getting materials to the disadvantaged, you probably were the sous chefs in the kitchen too, weren't you?
Yeah, I always hung around in the kitchen. I thought that was a pretty amazing thing. You know, I'd ask a question and I'd usually get an answer like, well, that's just the way it's done. And okay, that's the way I'm going to do it if that's the way it's done. My Aunt Darlene and my mama were, like I said, they knew a bunch of country cooking, and it was really, they could taste something. My mom was really good at, she could just taste something and take it apart, go back to the house and make it. And she did that to Shoney's strawberry pie.
Oh,
she decided
I remember strawberry pie from Shoney's.
She decided she could make Shoney's strawberry pie. So one Sunday after we left, we came into town after church and ate at Shoney's. She decided she was going to make Shoney's strawberry pie. So she went back and after one or two tries, she had Shoney's strawberry pie.
Wow. Then was that sort of a staple?
Oh no, she'd just throw it in every once in a while. Maybe make it for 4th of July, or when we got together and made ice cream and all that stuff.
So there were a lot of big family gatherings.
Well, it wasn't big, but we'd get together on Christmas and 4th of July, and all her brothers, my cousins, aunts and uncles. We had. She had one brother, Possum. His name was Robert, but everybody knew him as Possum. Electrician from around here forever. They like on 4th of July or Christmas when fireworks would happen, they'd always take all the firecrackers and bottle rockets, put them in a bag. Possum would give all us a lit cigarette, and they'd go back in the house. So we'd be out there shooting fireworks.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
That was my Uncle Possum though. But yeah, she had Uncle Possum, Robert, Uncle Dudley, Uncle Charles, and Uncle Gary. That was her brothers. And they all were pretty athletic guys. Her brothers were, like I said, they played basketball for Las Casas. They played baseball in a kind of a loose league that Noreen would play, Milton would play, Las Casas would play Christiana kind of thing. I think that's where she met my daddy. And she played on the 1953 Las Casas Women's State Championship team.
Wow.
From Las Casas. So they all were pretty athletic in that, her family.
Mm-hmm. So what were some other recipes that you like of hers? It was just good cooking. It was, she could fry chicken really good. She could, I remember on the weekends she would make
what her mama would do, she would make like 4 pies, and it was supposed to last all week. You know, or the 3 pies. She'd make a chocolate pie, pecan pie, and it was supposed to last her all week.
And they kept them in that pie safe.
Well, yeah, she'd keep them up in the...
Which was not refrigerated.
No,
it just
was
had
keep the ants
openings in it.
Yeah, keep the ants out.
Yep.
And she was just a good cook. Nothing really stands out because everything was good. And like I said, it was just really good country cooking.
But you really like to cook now.
Yeah, and it's because of her and my Aunt Darlene. And I'd like I said, I'd ask them, why are you doing it that way? That's the way you do it. And one time I asked my mama, she was holding a tomato in her left hand and cutting it with her right hand. And I said, you ever cut yourself? She said, I ain't cutting myself, I'm cutting tomatoes. So that sized that up pretty well.
No fancy little thing that you pushed
out.
She's
just cutting tomatoes. And I said, you ever cut yourself? I'm not cutting myself, I'm cutting tomatoes.
But you didn't just limit yourself to Southern cooking, because you mentioned one time about eggs Benedict for breakfast one morning. That wasn't a typical Southern.
No, and I like to stir fry, and I like Cajun cooking. I can make etouffee, and I've got an etouffee recipe from a Cajun woman in Louisiana once upon a time, and
authentic.
It's the stuff. And I like to cook. I like to eat, and I like to cook.
So you learned those things early from her, then expanded it as you did some of your other skills in terms of woodworking and crafts
being around the house,
so
you kind of had to absorb some things, or like Daddy says, you want to shell butter beans, you want to eat.
Well, that helps you figure that out, doesn't it? For
yeah,
sure.
I did. I don't want to shell butter beans. If you want to eat, you want to shell butter beans. And she was pretty much that way too.
Well, I know that she and Darlene, I believe it was, were featured in several newspaper articles back when the paper really gave a lot of, our local paper gave a lot of attention to the culinary arts and sharing recipes and so forth.
She was, I think one of them, when I was in the 5th grade, the first one was in either the Banner or the Tennessean, and then there was one later in the D&J but she had to include some for cowboy soup and various things.
Cowboy soup, now what's in that?
It's a big old hearty stew kind of thing.
Just whatever you had.
Kind of, sort of.
Lots of vegetables and then whatever meat, just for seasoning.
It's kind of, sort of that, yeah. But she had an official recipe for it, but it was a pot full of stuff is what it ended up being. It was really tasty.
My mother used to call that clean out the refrigerator.
That's
kind of thing. Whatever's in there that we need to eat up quickly or something. So interesting. Do you have any memories of the times when she was getting the room at the inn started? Where were you were you still at home then?
Yeah, she would, when she started it, they had a pickup point at the old jail down on West Main Street. And the churches would come around and pick them up, and they'd take them back to the churches and house them overnight, feed them, or whatever accommodation the church had. Put them in their gymnasium, put them in their wherever. And see, I used to go down to the old jail and collect everybody up. Everybody had to sign in, had to be in before 7 o'clock when the churches came around and got them or whatever it was. And so I helped with that and kind of kept people in line a little bit with, sometimes somebody come in drunk and we kind of have to straighten them out a little bit. But she always said, they need a place to sleep too. And I remember one time she said, I'd hate for the good Lord to be out here needing something to eat and some place to stay and me turn them away. Now,
the house that I remember her in is the log house.
Yes, ma'am.
Over on
Church Street.
So, but you were mentioning out at Las Casas. So when did you move to town?
We moved, when I was born, they lived in Canesville. And then they moved from Canesville to right upside the old Las Casas School. And then they moved from there to out between Las Casas and Walter Hill on Holly Grove Road. And then when I was in the 4th grade, we moved into town. Mm-hmm. But that was over on Eventide. And at the time was way out of town. And then in 1978, they bought that log cabin on Church Street. And me and Daddy worked on that house, and various other people. We worked on the house for 5 months.
Wow.
And then they lived in it until she died. Daddy died when, and then what, 15 years later she died. But they lived in it until they were gone.
Wow. So the house was sort of like the pie safe. She would buy things and sort of restore them with y'all's help.
Well, yeah.
I mean, she directed it maybe, but.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff that we restored and worked on in that house. And that house was a big project all by itself. But even she was in there, and there was they bought 4 or 5 houses, and she was in there every time with a bandana over her face and a hammer breaking plaster off the walls. Or, I mean, she wasn't shy at all about something like that. So, like I said, she'd beat plaster off walls, she'd be toting stuff back and forth to the dumpster. She wasn't shy.
And there were other areas she was in public service.
Well, she was in, I would say it's probably 1966 or thereabouts. She was the first woman elected to the Rutherford County Court, which is now the commission. They were magistrates at the time, now they're just commissioners. And she was the first woman elected, and the next election cycle there was 3 other women elected: Isabel Kilgo, Margaret Hayes, and B.J. Huggins. And they were all good ones too.
Yeah.
They used to come around the house all the time. But yeah, she was on the court for 2 terms. And I remember when we lived on Eventide, there was any number of times at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, there'd be a knock on the door. I had to get up and see what was going on, because I always know there was somebody wanting to get married.
Oh my gosh. I thought maybe it was the police needing her to sign something.
She was a magistrate, and they could perform,
yeah, they could do that then.
She could perform wedding ceremonies. And there was any number of times that she would, I was sitting at the top of the stairs, and she was standing in the door, and 2 people standing on the front porch, right outside the door. I do, and they're gone. And
wow.
And tell how many times I watched that. And as a matter of fact, there was quite a few people on their 40th anniversary want to renew their vows, got her to do it again.
Oh, wow.
They found her, and there was a couple of times, she was on the Ways and Means Committee, which that means you got to find the way and the means to pay for whatever the project is. So she kind of had her thumb on where the money was coming from and going to. And there was any number of times that she would be holding court out there in the front yard. There was one time that the deputy sheriffs wanted more deputies, more money, more cars, more something. And they came over there, and she was on the front porch, and they was in the yard, and they
pleaded their case and what they did and so forth.
And she'd seen what they'd get done, so.
I bet she'd always listen.
Oh yeah,
to whatever group came.
And if she could help, she'd help. And she was on, I think it was 2 terms. The first one was out at, we still lived out between Lascassas and Walter Hill and Holly Grove Road. And I remember going politicking with her. At night, after when Mom and Dad come in, we'd eat, then we'd get in the car and we'd have to go. And we'd go, it didn't matter if it was, white folks' house, black folks' house, didn't matter. We'd going in, we was sitting, we was talking. And like I said, we knew most of them anyway, because Daddy carried the mail. And I remember sitting on the porch with Mr. McAdoo. Didn't seem odd to me. Just, that's kind of the people I grew up with. They was all good folks, that's right. And Polly and William Swader, I remember going in and out of their house like I lived there. That's the way we were out there.
And that's that sense of community.
Yeah. Like I said, it didn't matter for white folk, black folk, we was just folk. And that's the way she pretty much approached everybody.
So she was really a trailblazer in women getting into public service, because
I would say yes, yeah, around here, because she, like I said, she was the first woman, and if she could do, she knew how to hold that spot and do with it, make that spot work, and she did.
And work for the good of others, not
Yeah,
necessarily for herself.
She didn't care about that.
Yeah.
Didn't care about that at all. And that just, if she had anything like that, that just came. That wasn't a thing at all for her to, I want recognition for this. Even at the room at the end, she just sat there in her office, and if people come in and needed help and could pass her test.
Oh, tell me about that.
I didn't know much about it. I mean, she had to, a retired FBI agent, a friend of mine, said that she was the best interviewer that he'd ever seen. Now, he's an FBI agent.
Wow.
He said, I had never seen anybody interview somebody like that, because he said she could pull out of somebody in a heartbeat.
So a vetting process to make sure they really needed the help.
Just wasn't a drunk looking for someplace to sleep.
I gotcha.
And like I said, Mark, he told me, he said, I've never seen anybody, she's the best interviewer I've ever seen. And he was trained by the FBI.
So that says a lot right there.
Yeah.
So she was tough, but she was fair.
Oh yeah, she could be. I saw her one day at the credit bureau. I was already kind of getting kind of tense about it, and there was a guy came in there that had been denied his mortgage or his car loan or whatever it was because of something that the credit bureau reported. They had a charge off or whatever it was, and he was going to make her take it off his record so he could get his car, his mortgage or whatever. And I don't work that way. And he started in on her, and she just toe-to-toe with him. And Jennings and Ayers going to take you out here feet first. You mess with me.
Whoa.
And that was the end of that.
He backed down.
Yeah, and I was already getting kind of concerned about the situation, and I saw that was fine. She had that, no problem.
So how long was she at the credit bureau?
I remember her working first at Roan Jewelry Store across the square over there. And she was the credit manager and assistant manager over there. And then she went to H.A. Todd furniture store down on East Main Street. And she was the credit manager down there. And then she went to the credit bureau. So she was at the credit bureau 30 plus years.
Oh, wow.
Pretty good while. She was the manager from day one.
So she was doing that while a lot of this public service work was going on too.
And it was kind of, I think she kind of blended the two together because, working with credit at the bank or whatever, she kind of got to know everybody and knew who she could kind of strong arm at that, or just knew everybody. And it's kind of hard to say no to her.
And they all had similar characteristics, those jobs, in terms of what her role in them. I can see that.
She had a degree from what it was called Middle Tennessee State College, or Normal, or whatever it was at the time. But she had a business degree from there. And it was, I don't know what kind of degree, but she went there and she could, that's where she learned typing, that's where she learned bookkeeping and all that that she knew. And that's what she was doing. I think her first job proper was at the sock counter at Woolworths. That's kind of funny that Woolworths had departments like that.
Well, it was a fine department store at one time.
Well, it was.
How does it make you feel to think that we're going back and taking these women's lives and trying to hear from family and friends what they were like and what characteristics they had and what they championed and how they influenced you? How can that influence other people in our county? Do you think?
I think it's absolutely wonderful that you get, because if I wasn't sitting here with you telling this story, or telling the things I know about my mama, it'd die with me. It'd be gone. It's just like something that's not passed on. It stops right there. It dies. And if people don't learn from, I kind of approach things, if I don't learn something every day, I don't feel like I've had a good day. So you need to learn from everything, the past, what people have left you, that's where we learn. And if we don't learn it, we're doomed to repeat it in some cases. There's a lot to be learned from just sitting on the porch talking to somebody. And that's where you get a lot of stuff. So, like I said, people need to know. People need to learn. People need to, wow, I didn't know that. And now you do.
And I think at the time they lived, in many cases, the men, because women were so busy at home having, and the men got the recognition for anything in the public at the time more than the women got for things that they had done.
I always thought that kind of played into her because she didn't want her brothers one-upping her. In sports. And
that competitive spirit came from having brothers.
I always thought that was kind of part of it. Because, like I said, she was on the basketball team, they were on the basketball team, they played baseball, they were just a bunch of athletic bunch. So I always kind of thought that might have pushed her along and didn't want to be left behind, because every one of them played baseball, played basketball, and so did she.
And there was a brother on the commission, right?
Yeah, her next oldest brother was on the commission too. And I was talking to my cousin, his son, on Labor Day, and he said he thought that they were on at the same time, like in the early 70s. And I don't remember that, but that he said he remembered that's when his daddy was on. So they must have been on at the same time, but I don't remember that. But I know he was on the county court. I just don't remember when.
Gotcha.
So there again, that might have been not wanting to let somebody catch up with her.
Yeah. For more information about our project, Leading Ladies of Rutherford County History, visit our website, leadingladiesrutherford.com. Or if you have a story of someone from the past who inspired you, you can share it on our website. For more information about the Rutherford Arts Alliance and what we're doing to promote arts, culture, and heritage, visit rutherfordartsalliance.org. And thank you for watching.